welcome everyone to today's session. Just like Clive said, as a bit of housekeeping, your cameras will be off and you'll be muted. Now we'll go through the session as best we can and get the presentation done, and then we'll save all questions for the end. There is a Q&A button somewhere on the screen, which I can't see personally, but I think you'll have access to it. So if you've got any questions, you can put them in there and into the chat. Alternatively, raise your hand in the Q&A session, and then we can take questions from there.
Thank you. And Graham, I think I've just seen a question. Will we be able to share the slides? And I think from my perspective, I have no issue with that.
Yep, no problem with that.
Okay.
We'll get them sent out to everyone.
Okay. I think John's just joined us, but he's on mute. John, you're on mute, I think.
I'll unmute.
Hello.
John.
Hello, John. How you doing?
There we go.
Well, I'm very well. My apologies for being late there. Technical problems as usual.
Yeah, no worries. We were just kicking off, John, so timely that you should join us. Okay, so it's good.
Thank you.
I'll turn my camera on as well, because we're co-hosting. So just introductions then. Obviously, I'm Clive Brady, the chairman of the BWA. And with me today is John. And John, obviously, you can introduce yourself. That'd be good.
Yeah, delighted to be here today. My name's John Gilmore. So I'm the commercial manager at Wyllie Recycling, and we're based up in Perth in Scotland. Okay,
good. And welcome to everybody. I think we've got about 56 on the call today on the webinar, which is a really good turnout. So thank you for your timing. Hopefully you'll find this really informative and helpful as we go through, and as Graham says, any questions, then please raise those in the chat so we can go through the slides, and then we can deal with those questions at the end of the session, because we'll have plenty of time to do with that. So Graham, can you just go on to the agenda for me? Great. So between myself and John will talk through some of these slides. I will talk through others. We've done our intros. We'll go through. John will give a brief overview of the Wyllie Waste Recycling Services. I'll take that on and go through what is the HMRC process for destructions. Then we'll cover the types of products, what happens to the products, and this is more back to John, along with sustainability and affordability slide, as well as other things to consider, other issues to consider. And then obviously the Q&A. I just noticed a question pop up and someone was saying they had no sound. I mean, Graham, is that an issue from our perspective or our end, or would that be the attendees' end?
Yeah, I think it's at the attendees' end. Okay. Someone's just said there is sound.
Yeah, there is sound. So yeah, okay.
Okay, good.
We'll crack on. Okay, then Graham, can you roll on to the first slide for us? Okay, John, over to you then.
Okay, I'll take this one, right. Thanks very much then, Clive. So Wyllie Recycling is a business. So first of all, I've been in the industry, goodness me, about 30 odd years. It seems like a lot longer. And I think the focus of today is primarily around compliance. I mean, certainly from an HMRC point of view and the regulations around that, that'll be something that most of the people on this call will be very familiar with. So from our point of view, from a waste regulatory point of view, I think the first things is we're a SEPA approved facility. You can get a number of facilities that have got exemptions depending on what their activities are. We've got a full waste management licence, and similarly the processes that we have in relation to the drink destruction are all with HMRC approval. Dependent on the value of materials that we're handling and the extent of the operations related to our insurances. So we've got quite a significant insurance covering the business, and that obviously we do other activities apart from the drink destruction. We have like local authority contracts in place as well, which obviously necessitates that. It's a 4.5 acre site, restricted access as you would expect in the type of facility, and if we focus in on the drink destruction, we've got our own dedicated building for that with limited access for personnel, etc. from a site management point of view, just the sheer number of vehicles that come on and deliveries and collections, so everything's delivered in pre-booked, and that fits in quite nicely with the kind of 5-day notice with the HMRC and that, so there's no sort of last minute rushing as far as this particular service is concerned. And we've got all the personnel within this operation, and the rest of our operations are all full-time employees. We've got dedicated personnel on the drink destruction side of the business. We don't have any agency staff, just full stop within the business, and in particular in this area. And I think one of the things that's worth pointing out as a business is we're a living wage employer. So, you know, that in itself, and you know, a lot of staff that have been with us continually, so we don't have a lot of turnover of staff for these kind of reasons. Our operation, it's primarily a Monday to Friday operation, and certainly for the drink destruction it is. When open up first thing Monday morning, and we're there till Friday night, and we've got a 24/7 operation during that week. We have daytime transport operation during the day, and then we've got an evening processing operation in the night time. And that's necessary, we feel, to process, and I've got, for example, around 30,000 tonnes, which is quite a lot of paper, glass, metals, etc. as a business. So to do that properly, safely, requires that kind of 24-hour operation. So that's a kind of an overview of what we're about as a business, and we've got a number of blue chip clients, obviously, as part of that. So yeah, hopefully we can go on to the next slide if that's helpful enough.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so from an HMRC process, so on focus, there's a few slides now on this, on what is a tightly controlled and managed process by HMRC. Now, some of you on the call will have been through this process, and I know and have been involved with yourselves in terms of getting you through this process. So it is tightly controlled, tightly managed, as you would imagine from HMRC. They force us to jump through a number of hoops, particularly around the duty suspended products. Now we're going to focus on the duty suspended products, primarily alcohol, but as you can see from this slide, then tobacco goods may also be destroyed without having to pay the duty. So the focus is on duty suspended product, primarily alcohol, but this process does apply where you have paid duty on alcohol and you want to reclaim the duty via an excise duty drawback claim. So that's another extension to this process. We're not running through that process today, but the acknowledgement or the notification from HMRC follows the same process, whether it's duty suspended or whether it's duty paid goods on which you wish to claim a duty drawback claim or process a duty drawback claim. So this follows. If it's motor and heating or fuel warehouse operations, then you should read that notice that that Graham has embedded in this slide. And overridingly, point 3, if someone else carries out the destruction, namely John and Wylie's, for example, then they're doing so on your behalf, and you remain, as the warehouse keeper, responsible for making sure that all procedures, HMRC procedures, are complied with. So although you're abdicating the responsibility to John for the destruction of the goods, you as the warehouse keeper, and that may be on behalf of your customer, then you are responsible for the whole procedure, okay, from start to finish. And that is worth remembering, and we'll come back in a later slide, which is a really important point in terms of how HMRC view such destructions, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So HMRC may grant permission if the goods are damaged. So these are the typical examples why maybe either you or your customer may want to destroy due to suspended alcohol. The goods are damaged, the goods are surplus after operations, the goods are refuse, the goods are in a non-marketable condition, and that's probably the most common, potentially, and potentially the duty is more than the value of the goods. So that's not an exhaustive list, but that's a typical list of the reasons why either yourself or your customer may well seek consent to destroy. And then most importantly, the overriding important point to take away from this on this slide is that you may wish to destroy those goods for a valid reason, but you do have to gain that consent from HMRC before you do anything. And that's really important. John, would you have anything to add to that?
No, I just stress that final point more than anything. I think even from our point of view, even we've had clients where they've had potentially dates that they're going to go ahead with and had to call us back at the 11th hour to say, sorry, we've had to delay that until some further documentation gets agreed with HMRC. So from our point of view, we understand that that's the nature of the business that we're in, and that date can fluctuate, because if HMRC insist on seeing the material, for example, before it's destroyed, we just have to go with that. So that flexibility, I think, is kind of inbuilt with our side of the business.
Sure. And we'll go on to just to evidence and to demonstrate how tightly controlled this is by HMRC in terms of, yes, there's a reason, and you want to gain consent and permission to destroy, but the amount of evidence or information you have to provide HMRC to gain that consent is very detailed, and we'll go on to that in a moment, John. Okay, yeah, next slide, please, Graham. As we said, we'll take questions at the end. So what is the process? This is obviously slide 2. Now, there's 2 key critical kind of time frames. You must give HMRC notice, at least 2 days notice, excluding Saturdays, Sundays and bank holidays, if you want to destroy in your approved premises. Now, that's less common. And what we're talking about primarily today, John, isn't it, is
the 5 notice.
Destroying on your premises, in effect, which requires a 5-day notice and notification to HMRC, again, excluding Saturdays, Sundays and bank holidays, if you want to destroy outside your approved premises. Okay, so it's, in most cases, particularly tying up with the likes of a company like John and Wyllie's, and clearly there are others as well, but the 5-day notice is the most common and will apply. Yeah. That notification needs to be sent to that email address. Now, what I would add to that, if you're a business that is managed by HMRC Large Business, I would copy in your large business contact. Okay, so that proves to be helpful and can be helpful if we get issues through the notification or gaining consent or permission process. So keeping your known HMRC contacts in the loop on anything like this is really helpful and beneficial. And we've got clear evidence from recent events, actually, where having that, bringing your officers, let's call them nominated or controlling officer, into play in this is beneficial and helpful if you run into issues. So that's the main notification email. Definitely bring in your large business contact email address as well. You should be aware that any notice to HMRC about destruction does not lessen your responsibilities under anti-pollution laws. So that's really important. I mean, you're not abdicating any of those responsibilities. John, any view on that from your perspective?
No, certainly. I think that the kind of anti-pollution law, and I think more and more people are more familiar with that becoming a normal part of every day now compared to what it maybe was historically. When you think of the legacy kind of disposal methods in the past for sort of secure burial and what have you, these days are long gone. So the anti-pollution laws and the Duty of Care and Environmental Protection Act really sort of governs all this, because it is waste at the end of the day. It is a product that, notwithstanding the HMRC issue, it is a product that is no longer required and is being discarded, and it has to be done safely and properly.
Indeed. Okay, next slide, please, Graham. So now delving into what information must we tell HMRC if we want to destroy, we want to send goods to John and we want John to destroy those. So putting in this context, so you must tell HMRC why you want to destroy the goods, and we looked at an example list. So you need to be clear and concise with regards to why you want to destroy those goods, or your customer's goods. The customer wants to destroy their own goods. The description and quantity of the goods, the potential amount of duty involved, the date, time and place of proposed destruction. So that's where you absolutely need to tie in with the likes of John and Wyllie's in terms of of you having capacity, John, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a very integral part of it, and obviously the 5-day notice. Going back to that, is excludes weekends and bank holidays, for example. So the having that sort of calendar set up in advance, and again, it's not just necessarily the date and the place, but the time is more and more becoming an issue. So similarly for us, having a 24-hour operation, we're quite fortunate, but notwithstanding that, we still have to liaise as best we can with the customer to get a time and a place that works with everybody. And taking your point earlier that dates and times and not place, but definitely dates and times may flex. Is that yes, retaining or maintaining communication and feeding back to HMRC in terms of any variations. The dates and times notified to HMRC are really important. So again, keeping them in the loop. If any of those dates and times that you've agreed with your destruction site, in this case Wyllie's, then that needs to be fed and must be fed back to HMRC to keep them, in the loop and continue to give them visibility. Yes, John? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And one final point on this slide: if HMRC decide that the proposed method of destruction is not satisfactory, then they will tell you in writing. So that final point I did miss, which is the method of destruction as well. We need to be clearly telling. And I guess, John, you'll have a method statement that you can share with
we do. Yeah, we do indeed. And it sort of basically breaks it down into a few sort of fairly kind of sort of concise sort of statements here that summarises the service for sure. Yeah.
So that's something you would share with your potential.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would share it with them and explain just what the process is and what the terminology to use when they're putting their claim in to or their notification into HMRC. So it's a consistent story there.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, good. And anything else to add on that slide, John?
No, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think I don't think you can stress enough just how detailed and precise it has to be. We've had so many over the years. The number of pallets is different, the number of kegs is different, or whatever that number is. Just to be accurate at all stages is just the watchword all the time.
It's a really important point, and we'll go on to the next slide because that comes through on this next slide from the warehouse keeper's perspective.
Yes.
So this is the final slide on the process, really, and what we said here is that as all approved destruction sites will not be authorised to receive duty-suspended goods, HMRC's policy for one-off warehouse destructions, and this is a really important point actually, which is little understood and often missed, is that HMRC's policy in improving a consent or request to destroy is that their policy for a one-off warehouse destruction is to treat the destruction site, so in this case John's site, as a temporary extension to your approved warehouse authorization. Now that is often missed. So this has the effect of the destruction being deemed to take place in warehouse. Therefore, neither EMCS nor movement guarantees are required. So we know these kind of movements from the premises to the destruction site are outside the scope of EMCS and do not require a movement guarantee. But this is why they don't, because HMRC's view is they are temporarily approving John's site as part of your excise warehouse authorization. So although we got to give them 5 days notice because it's deemed to be outside of the premises or outside the of the site of your excise warehouse, when they get to approve, then they're effectively bringing John's site into your approval. There's a bit of a conflict there from the earlier statement, but that's really important to understand. And taking John's point about accuracy of what's being sent and what's being destroyed, is that if there are any discrepancies around that, what was sent and what was destroyed, then that will be deemed as a loss in warehouse from an HMRC perspective. So not a loss in transit, not a loss in movement, but a loss in your excise warehouse. So that's really important. So HMRC require as the warehouse keeper through commercial records and site records to provide evidence that these goods have been destroyed in accordance with the notice given. So you've requested the permission, they've granted the permission. You need to retain records to evidence that they have been destroyed in line with that permission and that consent. And the most important document to secure and retain is a certificate of destruction, which John will touch on in a moment, as issued by the destruction site following the actual destruction of the goods. So we really do need to keep clear evidence of what's been destroyed, when it was destroyed, and it does tie into the consent secured. Really important. It touches on your point you made just earlier there, John, is that we need to make sure that what was picked, packed, and dispatched for destruction is in fact destroyed. Yeah. Any further comments on that, John?
No, I think you're just, as you say, the certificate of destruction, which we'll just come on to, is effectively a summary of what we're being sent and has to accurately affect what HMRC were notified of in the first place. The two of them must absolutely match.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they don't, then obviously HMRC will get visibility of that, because you'll need to probably provide that a copy of the destruction certificate back to HMRC once the process is completed, and HMRC then will deem any discrepancies as a loss in the warehouse keeper's warehouse. So that heightens the senses to make sure, one, the process is followed, and two, the goods that are, that what we do send is what we've sent, and is what's destroyed. Because HMRC will come back looking for any, will assess, I guess, for any discrepancies that drop out of that process. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, and we'll come back to any questions around that in the Q&A session. Graham, next slide for us, please. Yeah, John, do you want to take people through?
I'll lead on that. So here's an example of a certificate of destruction. This is effectively a kind of what we would call a summary document. It's a two-part document. Details on it, and the product description. In this particular case, it's case goods, and it was 26 pallets. So it's been an article load of material that's been brought in, a consignment's been brought in. We've got reference numbers, waste transfer note numbers, etc., which support that consignment and the date, and it's signed off by our managing director. The second part of that is more of a detailed manifest, which in most instances we would receive. It comes through in the form of maybe like an Excel spreadsheet, and the customer will either list all the products, and as Clive alluded to, includes the duty values that are involved in that process as well. And so that manifest does a couple of things. Obviously details exactly what's meant to be getting destroyed, and we can sort of see that when it arrives at our place. And if it's described as cases of beer and we arrive up with kegs of beer, or vice versa, it's something that's very obvious that we can see there's been something amiss there. Thankfully, that's never happened before, and we always do receive what we're supposed to get. But these two documents are really important. The manifest, one of the things that Wyllie's introduced, is just to when that document gets sent back to the client, which is ultimately a certificate of destruction, which they're going to then forward on to HMRC. On our side, we put basically a kind of company logo, but it's a watermark on that manifest sheet, which effectively demonstrates that consignment's been to Wyllie's, and we've seen it and we've destroyed it, and we're comfortable with the items that were listed and that are summarised on that 26 pallets. And so the two documents, the 2 pages rather, we would issue back to the customer, which they forward on to HMRC.
Yeah. And just a definition of manifest then, John, that could be a packing list, that could be a delivery note. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's essentially, almost always there's going to be a list somewhere within the organisation that's sending us that material, or that consignment, of the items that they're sending. And it might just be 1 or 2 lines. No, it could be quite a mixed load if it's a clear out or something like that, for example, from a warehouse, in which case we would have to have a full list, and it could be 40, 50 items listed on that effectively in a spreadsheet. Most commonly, it's on an Excel spreadsheet. That's the simplest and easiest way to communicate that across.
Okay, good. Okay. Again, we'll pick up any questions at the end sessions and Q&A session. Graham, next slide for me. So, John, do you want to take the type of product?
Yes, typically these are the kind of the way the goods would arrive at our facility, or occasionally we would get asked to collect. In most instances, they're palletised. Our facility is designed, it's a bulk disposal facility. That's kind of what we're expecting it. So it's coming in an Arctic trailer when drivers come onto our site. So because of the type of business we are, so we're not a waste yard like skips and all that. So it's pretty much like a distribution centre, a yard where the vehicles are coming in and being unloaded with forklifts and reloaded with empty, for example, kegs there, which we liaise back and forward with the clients. But in normal circumstances, it's case goods, it's finished product, it's been labelled, it's ready to go effectively, and it's been called off for whatever reason. And it's that we are then tasked with dealing and how we destroy that.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please, Graham. So I think this next slide is really important to go through with people, John. It comes to understanding what happens to the product. I think that's really beneficial to understand that.
Well, absolutely. And I think rather than just like what happens to the products, I think one of the things that's really important here is to understand why it happens to the products. So certainly within our business, we're obviously a recycling business, and green and environmental things is kind of second nature to us. But what we've seen in the last maybe sort of 5 years or so has been a huge shift. And so if you focus on this particular industry, the drink destruction industry, there has historically been other routes to go with that product for destruction, as I say, whether it was secure burial historically, or going into an incinerator to be destroyed, which is completely fine and it destroys it in a necessary way. But I think there's really a real awareness now from businesses in the supply chain here, from the manufacturer right through. There's a whole lot of resources going into these products, and if you've seen the pallets before, the pictures before, it's cardboard boxes, it's wooden pallets, it's shrink wrapping, it's glass, it's aluminium cans, and there's liquid itself. And all these are effectively commodities in their own right and resources in their own right, and it just seems a real shame just to burn them all and destroy it. And so there's a real awareness now from our customers of, what can you do to salvage and recover or recycle the packaging, notwithstanding or compromising the destruction process. So that's kind of where our efforts have been. Is so we need to have a destruction process first and foremost, but allows us to capture or recycle the packaging, and actually where our efforts have been in the last wee while. So if you use case goods, for example, the actual bottles that are predominantly all glass, they're all decanted from the packaging before being shredded, and the glass is captured and recovered. The cardboard is similarly baled. The polythene is baled, the wooden pallets are recycled or possibly returned if it's kind of blue chip pallets. Some organisations have got a system in place. Canned goods, predominantly it's cans of beer and spirits. You do see the wee change in the drink sector as trends appear. So kind of sort of cocktail drinks now are becoming a lot more popular in smaller cans. And so the machinery that's going to deal with these things has to be able to cope with these different sizes, even down to miniatures, for example. So it's important that we've got the equipment that can manage all these things. Where we get product in, and obviously it's in beer, you would expect if it's in steel kegs, we get the kegs disgorged, checked and stacked, and we generally arrange a next day collection with the brewery or the keg agent or whoever would be involved in that process, so the kegs can get back out into reuse again. And it's probably no surprise that certainly that particular service, we did quite a bit of that during things like COVID, for example, where there was a need for that kind of service. There is a growth in areas, things like plastic kegs, which a lot of sort of smaller craft brewers in particular use. and obviously they get more beer on your lorry if it's in a plastic keg than in a steel keg. So that's quite popular with smaller users, and we're the agent for the both Polykeg and Key Keg, which are a couple of the main manufacturers, and we get them disassembled and recycled back into, believe it or not, new plastic kegs. All the kind of the secondary packaging, the polythene, the cardboard and the pallets, they're all separate, destroyed and recycled. The spirits, beer, wine and any other drinks that we get, so they're all denatured. That's the first thing that we need to do as a matter of course. And then we put them into a 30,000 litre tank together, and that tank is going to deliver it off to anaerobic digestion, so it goes to AD. And AD is produces effectively a kind of renewable energy. It goes gas to grid, but it also produces a fertiliser. So, and certainly within the terms of the waste hierarchy, that process is recycling, is classed as recycling, so it's 100% recycling. And I think one of the key bits here that we've been able to get involved and offer customers 100% recycling is the growth of AD. AD facilities weren't commonplace 20, 30 years ago within the industry. They just weren't. But now there is a growing, there's a number of them up and down the country, and the sort of liquid mix that we have is attractive for them to be able to use on an ongoing basis. So for us, we tend to, so we're not in for export. We tend to go to direct to end users. So we try not to get involved in middlemen or commodity brokers or traders. We tend to deal with the same material types, and in our mind, we produce it to a spec that can go straight for recycling, so straight to the paper mill or straight to the plastic company to make into new polythene or whatever that thing is. We don't have to go through a third party, so it gives us a bit more control, and more we actually deliver it ourselves with our own driver and our own trucks to these facilities, so we'll get a lot more control over what happens with it. And that goes back to not just from a sort of commercial point of view, but certainly listening to our clients. They're anxious about what happens to their stuff. They want to know where it goes, and so for us, transparency has just been the way day one, and so we don't have any secrets. We're quite happy to tell them what paper mill it went to or whatever that thing might be. I think it's quite important, and within the end users that we have, we're quite happy to share. We call it kind of waste map, be able to tell a customer with some certainty where the different homes are for that. And to be fair, they do have an obligation themselves under their own duty of care to ask where it's going, so it's not like we're just being nice. We've got an obligation to do that, and I think it's encouraged.
Yeah, indeed. We touch on that on the next slide, actually. So I think that's really helpful to understand, where following the process, where these products, you rightly say, commodities, because they are in their own right commodities.
Absolutely, they are. Yeah, for sure.
What happens to those, and yet provide full visibility and traceability, which I think is increasingly important, isn't it? Good.
And there is a growing sort of school of thought. For example, the companies that are producing this packaging, and you obviously think in terms of the bigger players like the Coca-Colas of this world, but having much more of an interest in what's happening to that waste packaging, and if that's their bottles or their cans, can that go back into their supply chain to make more empty bottles or more empty cans for their customers? So we have dialogue with some of these people in that supply chain process as a matter of course, and I think that's quite important.
Good. Okay. Thanks, John. Next slide, please, Graham. So we've got a slide, John, around sustainability and affordability. Sure. I mean, for me, one of the important points on this slide is the appropriate due diligence and beware of low-cost solutions. But I mean, your views around, obviously, some of the statements there we've made. Yeah,
I mean, I think the sustainability. I think most people now have got their head around that. That's kind of key of what we all do now these days. And as I touched on earlier on, the need for these materials to be captured and recycled rather than disposed of by some burning or whatever options were there. So that has become sort of second nature. And I think the ability to have some traceability around that is an absolutely key part of that as well. So apart from the process, it's where it's going, and so things like carbon miles, for example, are a big ticket item. And apart from the exporting and shipping miles and all that, having a UK home is attractive. But similarly, if we can recycle glass in Scotland, that'd be a lot easier for us than it would be taking it down to Middle England. One of the things from a geographical point of view is, we've got certain facilities in Scotland we don't have probably enough, and some more infrastructure. So you have to fit the infrastructure that's available with what the products are that you're producing. So we've worked quite hard to try and do that. So we're supplying consistently the same product, the same high quality product to the next end user, and we tend to be quite loyal. We don't change every 5 minutes for a couple of pounds more or a couple of pounds less. We tend to be quite loyal as a supplier, and that gives us certainty for offtake. In our business, we can't really turn the tap off. It just keeps coming in, so we have to process it promptly and then move it on as quickly as we can. So having that sort of a relationship is a really important part for us, without a doubt.
Yeah. And some of the other points there. I was just going to say, obviously the carbon miles we kind of touched on, and the new sort of processes that we're offering here for destruction compared to historical processes are a bit more sustainable, without a doubt. I think from a recycling point of view, most businesses have a report somewhere within their business of how much was recycled and how much went to landfill and stuff like that. So that would certainly support that, for sure. And I think the circular economy is just becoming more and more a phrase that we're seeing all the time. But I think the concept, and certainly for our point of view, the reason that we use we like using AD, and I used to work there a number of years back, is the ability for the liquids to get used, turned into fertiliser, to get spread on the land to grow crops, and whether that's, so you maybe gather from my accent, I'm on the west coast of Scotland, so it's quite wet here, and it's predominantly dairy farms, to be fair. But it's that kind of idea of being able to put stuff on the land that we can grow, whether it's crops or hops for beer, etc., and have that genuine kind of circular economy there. It makes complete sense. And the last point, just as you said, Clive, I think the due diligence thing is just such an important part. It just is, and we certainly wouldn't shy away from any questions or awkward questions somebody asks us what happened to it or where's it going. Quite happy to share that without any problem. And the beware of low cost solutions, I just see that happening over time. But I think when you take a step back and you're looking at the potential value, certainly from the HMRC point of view, that a consignment has, whether it's 26 pallets of product, can be worth quite a significant amount of money. To be trying to save a couple of pounds literally is probably not the cleverest idea. So certainly in our way of thinking is, we're quite straight and out front, but there's a cost to do a service correctly, as I'm quite sure all our customers that are on this call agree with, I would think. Whatever the cost is, we certainly be wary of it being kind of undercharged. That's something that we just wouldn't go down that road. Yeah, and when you look at the HMRC perspective, which is that these are in the excise warehouse destructions.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
Even though they're occurring on
absolutely. You're completely correct.
That focus on undertake the appropriate due diligence is really relevant, and beware of those low cost solutions, because if there is anything untoward, HMRC are coming straight back to the warehouse keeper. It's not who moved it, who destroyed it. It's coming back to the warehouse keeper. So that's the focus. That's the real point I want to get across from the compliance perspective.
That point of risk, it's all about risk at the end of the day, no question. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, good. Okay, next slide, please, Graham. I think we're on the last slide. I think we just wanted to outline, John, didn't you, some examples of other common recycling services?
That was very generous of you giving me a wee 30-second pitch. But as you would expect, albeit we do a drink destruction service, inevitably, as many people across the drinks industry are aware, things like the luxury packaging and gift boxes, etc., that go with that, which we're big fans of. These things ultimately, not necessarily with liquid in them, but just as empty packaging, need to be treated and disposed of in some way. So to be able to do that from a brand protection point of view and recycle it at the same time takes a wee bit of effort and generally pairs of hands. So we've got a bit of expertise and experience in doing that. And inevitably that extends on to things like merchandise and branded glasses and what have you. So being able to take care of that kind of thing is an addition to us, and it just makes us kind of easier to deal with from our customers' perspective. And things like cardboard, and whether it be unused packaging, and again, if it's branded, it's all baled and pulped and destroyed, these things as part of the recycling process. And then there's a lot of other materials that are just everyday recycling things that people in warehouses do have, balers for cardboard and polythene and what have you, and we buy and we trade in these kinds of items all the time. So that's absolutely fine. And recently we've got involved with a couple, particularly in the drinks industry, where we would supply what we would call kind of waste handling equipment. So it could be 10, 20, 30,000 pounds worth of equipment, whatever that thing might be. And, in simple terms, we supply it to the client over a term at no cost to them, on the understanding that we get the material back, and there's some commercial deal around that. So that is a kind of growing part of our business, and a couple of businesses have found that quite attractive to have, for sure. But as I say, it's thanks for the opportunity just to tell you sales pitch.
Pleasure. Okay, Graham, next slide. I think we're on to questions now. I think. Great. Graham, can you see questions that have been lodged?
Yeah. So we have got some. I'll just go through the list. Yeah. Ronnie Reed just raised a good question. Where does the glass go for recycling?
Okay, so the glass goes to a number of different options. Starting up in Scotland, so we've got a couple of options both in Edinburgh and the Newhouse area. And happy to share the details of any particular customers, further details with MD after the call. It's a bit unfair to give out names of individual companies here and there, I think, if that's okay.
So what does happen to the glass then physically? Does that get crushed, I guess, and then that goes?
Absolutely, it gets crushed. It generally gets, after that, it gets through a sorting, it's a separation process on the glass recycling plant. And depending on what it is they're making, because there's a couple of different types of plants there, they'll either colour segregate it, they can crush it down to almost like salt type material, but in virtually every case, it's made into new glass bottles. That's ultimately what's happening with it. As far as the process is the type of glass coming through the drink destruction process isn't have to go into like road asphalt or anything like that. It generally always gets recycled into glass bottles.
Okay, thanks, John. Next question, Graham.
Yeah. Okay. So this one came from Lorraine. She said, if a spirit is in a wooden cask, do we deliver this? Do we deliver in this way, or do we need to decant this in advance for sending for destruction?
Well, certainly from if I give a Wyllie reply on that one, certainly our business, we can accept it in casks. Over the last year or two, I've got quite a number of different requests, Graham, from different organisations, whether so some materials we receive in IBCs or it comes in casks, and we're able to accept it in the cask itself. So that would be a yes to that one.
And the cask then would go back then once.
Again, it would be up to what the client has. So we took a consignment of casks in recently where the client didn't want the casks at all. They had been used for so many years and they were just at the end of their life. and although they had some liquid in it for destruction, they didn't want the empty cask back, because so they'd asked us to dispose or recycle the casks on their behalf. So if it's up to them to tell us what they would wish to do. We can do either or.
Okay, thanks, John. Next question, Graham.
Okay, yeah, interesting one from Lorena. She's just asked, what do you do with fruits soaked in alcohol? Do you charge per weight or specific measure of pallet or IBC?
Right, so primarily we're a drink destruction service, so generally we don't get the fruits that come in it. So the drinks that have been soaked, or fruit's been soaked in, it's the alcohol or the drink that we would normally get. So we very, very, very seldom get any requests to destroy or deal with the actual fruit itself. The drinks that are in the cans or the glass at that stage, there's no fruits in it, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. So what would normally happen to those? I mean, a hypothetical situation then, John, what would normally happen to those soaked fruits?
Well, certainly, certainly my experience, having done a couple of inquiries in the past on a kind of smaller scale, I think it was a gin distillery at one point. So they had arranged it locally. They were sending theirs to, I think it was a local kind of AD facility or a local composting type facility. That's what they were trying to do to deal with it. But it was small quantities, to be fair, that they had. But fruits, soaked fruits, isn't something that we would generally receive as part of our day-to-day business.
So they would go off to compost kind of.
I would imagine there's some kind of organic route that could go, rather than you don't want to just dump it in general waste. There's some other option there. But happy to have a conversation. I'm not sure who Lorraine, but if they're happy to put in touch, if that's helpful, Graham, and see if we can help an outlet for that there.
Okay. Thank you,
John. Michelle at DHL has just asked, so from when duty suspended products arrive, how long before they are destroyed? How long does that take?
So we're very much a just-in-time business, so we want to destroy them the same day. That's why the key to as Clive alluded to, the correspondence and communication is vital. It's in a secure warehouse as it is at the moment. We really just want it to come into us for destruction. That's all what it's coming for. It's for destruction. So if that would be, it'd be a same day. That's our business. Within 24 hours would be the.
Yeah. Now, and I think that's a really good question, because again, coming back to HMRC's view on this, which is that this is happening in, say, it's my warehouse. Okay, I want you, John, if I'm sending it to you, and you're temporarily approved as part of my warehouse, I want you to destroy that as soon as.
Yes. Correct. Yeah, absolutely. It's a risk for the customer and for us as well. So no, you're right. As it comes out, we're effectively their outside warehouse, for want of a better phrase, and so we want to destroy it the same day. So the delivery date is really important with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and in fact, when you look at the request or consent that you're sending to gain permission, they're asking for a date of destruction, a date and time. So we need to be working to that. So we've said, right, it's going to be destroyed at 7 o'clock in the morning on your premises. It needs to be destroyed at 7 o'clock on your premises.
Absolutely.
Or whatever time that may be. So I think that's a really important point and a great question. So the date and time particularly needs to be as notified to HMRC or part of that, as requested. We want to send it to you, John, and this is the time we want you to destroy it, or you can destroy it. That's the permission. That's the basis of the permission.
And that dialogue is generally, you're absolutely right. So for us, we would generally, and usually, to be fair, we try and accommodate the client. The client generally comes to us and says, I have a consignment here and would like to deliver it to you on these dates. Can you accommodate these dates? And we would say yes. If we couldn't, we would say to them, look, we can't accommodate you, we're full, or whatever's happened in that situation. Can you delay it for a week, or for example? And if they can, they would say, yeah, that's absolutely fine, John. And if they can't, and they say, no, it's got to go on this date, we would have to just hold our hand up and say, well, it can't go into our facility on that day, because that's for sure.
Great point. Next question, Graham.
Okay, we've got a couple more. So Stefan has asked, what's the process for destroying goods where the customer has ceased trading and you are left with the duty suspended goods?
It's an absolute hoot. That's what the process is. To be fair, we've actually had to do it, unfortunately, quite a few times recently. An hour is to go through whoever's administering that estate, whoever the practitioner is, or the
administrator or
whatever that is. Or generally, and so from our point of view, we have to have a request to go and see what the situation is, what's left over, and it's generally a mixture of product and pallets, half pallets, and goodness knows what. So there's a thing that has to be assessed, and A, can we do the job? B, what is the cost? And C, for them to give the approval to pay our bill. And if we can't get the approval to pay our bill, we just have to say, sorry, we can't do it. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah. And I think another aspect of Stefan's question is it actually who retains ownership and title of the goods. That's a key aspect to that. So, is there a lien over the product or the goods that then falls to the warehouse keeper, and therefore they're his goods or her goods or their goods to destroy?
Yep.
Or is it the liquidator has ownership or the administrator has ownership? So I think it's the title of the goods first and foremost, and then the same process applies, doesn't it? Because from your perspective, John, you just need to know you're going to get paid, and there's the appropriate consent or permission to destroy.
No, it's a good point Stefan makes. In the occasions that we've been asked direct, it's generally a liquidator that's came to us to say there is a distiller or somebody within the drinks industry has went into liquidation. Can you help with clearing their warehouse and destroying the product that was unsold or whatever the case may be? So that's a fairly straightforward process and dialogue with the liquidator to give us payment of it. Within the situation you alluded to there, Clive, that's a wee bit more complex, and you would want to understand who's got ownership of that first, or responsibility for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Next question, Graham.
Okay, I think this is the last one for the moment. But yeah, Scott at DHL has just asked if the date of destruction advised to HMRC is 5 working days, but circumstances mean its destruction is delayed. Do we need to advise HMRC of the time and date change, even if it exceeds the minimum day's notice?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because, and I think that's the important point. What you don't want to do is go back through the loop again in terms of gaining the permission and the consent. So what you want to do, and we've experienced this fairly recently with a member, which is that you want to keep HMRC in the loop. So if that for whatever reason John doesn't have the capacity, say for example, to deal with that, and that date goes back and it's beyond the 5 days, then obviously we need to notify HMRC of that change of date and time. So I think it's really important that you keep HMRC in the loop on that.
Yeah. I would agree 100%. Because if, the point you made earlier on was absolutely correct, Clive. You are going to notify them of a date and time that you're going to destroy it. That's their last piece of correspondence, and then they're going to get another piece of correspondence that says it was destroyed, but it wasn't at that date and time that we told you, and that's not helpful. So I think notifying them, just keeping them in control, in the loop all the time, is by far the best way, without a doubt.
And it avoids resetting the clock, which is what I think the question alludes to, is that, you want to be, it's an extension of that request that has to be in, with 5 days prior to the destruction. Well, then you don't want that clock ticking again. It's just, right, okay, well, it's 5 plus 1 day, then we're going to destroy on 5 plus 2 days. You don't want to reset the clock. So you keep them in the loop by saying, right, destruction date and time is moved by a day to the next day, and this is the allotted time that we've agreed with John and Wyllie. So I think that's how I perceive it to pan out, and it's why you need to keep HMRC in the loop.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%.
Any other questions, Graham?
Yeah, just one more from Ronnie. In fact, I'll just turn your mic on, Ronnie, because you've got your hand raised. Can you hear us?
Hey there, Ron.
Yeah,
Hi there, Ronnie.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, can
Yeah.
do.
Hi, John. How you doing?
I'm very well. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to see you again, mate. Yeah, we're just want to raise the different criteria that HMRC seem to have between duty paid spirit, which you are trying to destroy, as opposed to duty suspended. And obviously, if you're going to claim the money back on the excise duty, it's the drawback notice, which I think is 207. And they only have 3 criteria if you want to claim back the excise duty, which is faulty, deterioration, or contamination. But if you've got duty suspended goods, then you're looking at notice 197, section 14.9, and that does allow you to destroy non-marketable condition goods. Now, that's quite a big difference there in terms of the perception of HMRC, because you could end up with goods, as I'll be honest, as we have, which cost so much money to put them back into a condition to be marketable that it's more than you would ever receive back. So that's something I'm going to try and pursue with HMRC and their modernisation, their new single digital return. But yeah, just be careful if you have got and are intending to claim drawback on destroying of the alcoholic spirit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, there seems to be an inconsistency, but there needs to be consistency, which is the point you make, Ronnie. And therefore, if you do have duty paid goods that you want to destroy or need to destroy, then that NOI is critical of getting that lodged and getting the agreement from HMRC that there can be a drawback claim made.
Yeah, they don't seem to want to issue that. I mean, we've had one in the past where, we had goods which were stolen, and then they were recovered. In the meantime, we paid the excise duty on the goods, because obviously they demand that from your guarantor.
Sure.
And then the goods were recovered, or a lot of the goods were recovered, and HMRC refused to let us destroy them. And we had to take that, they just refused. So we had to explain to the guy that these goods had been in the hands of organised crime for many months. There was no guarantee that they hadn't been doctored or tampered with. And I literally had to say to him, do you want to have the guilt in your hands if someone's poisoned with this stuff? And only then did they sort of change their tune. So they need to sort things out of the HMRC and make sure that the two of these, the drawback notice and 197 are in line. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a great point, and they need to be, Ronnie. So from an association's perspective, we would support that definitely. So
certainly, just to pick up on what Ronnie says, certainly from our destruction process is the exact same, whether it's duty suspended or duty paid. We don't do anything different to a consignment as far as the process and the shredding and destruction and all. Everything's the exact same there, so there's a consistency there as well, Ronnie, which kind of supports your position there, I would suggest.
Okay, so thanks for that. Cheers, guys.
Yeah, great question, Ronnie.
Yeah,
statement even. Great statement. Graham, any other questions? I saw something flash across the screen there.
Yeah, Scott has had his hand up for a while, so I'll just allow you on mic, Scott. Scott McDonald.
Hey there, Scott.
Hello, hi Scott.
Hi John, how you doing?
I'm very well.
It's just a couple of quick points. Recently, when we've been performing duty drawback, it's becoming harder and harder. And it even depends on who you're speaking to within that department as to how successful you are and how much stuff gets rejected. I mean, at the end of the day, they've got their duty and they'll go to hell and back not to pay that money back out. So it's vitally important that you get these pieces of information right. And Wyllie's have been great at accommodating additional requests. That's the first point I'd like to make. The other point I'd like to make is having spoken and dealt with Jim, Wyllie and John Gilmer for quite some time now. They're quite modest crowd, but I'm a great advocate of them, and I'm not wanting to sort of talk too much about them. But at the end of the day, we were approached during Brexit. We had in excess of about 50,000 kegs of beer that had to be destroyed, and we went to some of the bigger businesses that are out there, and they all sort of turned around and said they weren't interested. We approached Wyllie's and we hadn't really spoken to them before, and they were very quick to step up to the mark and start performing that function for us. And all I would say is, if anybody's thinking about looking for somebody to service their needs, then Wyllie's, I'm a great advocate of them. They're a great bunch of people and they do a fantastic job. So I'd just like to give them a wee plug there.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much, Scott. Certainly
Good.
appreciate it. That's kind of you. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Graham, any other questions?
Yeah, we've actually had two more. So,
Okay.
Abhishek, you've asked, what license do you need to destroy at a trade facility warehouse?
More you, Clive, than me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a specific license, would it? But I mean, if you wanted to destroy within the trade facility warehouse, then you would follow this process to obtain the appropriate permission to do so. I'm not overly familiar with destruction within a trade facility. Normally, these obviously goods go to an external facility such as Wyllie's, etc., and they are destroyed. But there is no, I don't believe, or I'm not aware of any specific license. You can destroy within the warehouse if you gain the appropriate consent. So it's following this due process as we've outlined today to get that appropriate consent. Now, providing you tick all the boxes from an HMRC perspective, I assume they would give you the permission. But if there's any aspect they've got concerns about, environmental issues, polluting issues, potentially, then they may well, withhold that permission. I mean, from your perspective, John, anything to add to that?
Well, certainly so we've got a full waste management license on our facility. We have, particularly on the drink destruction side of it, so part of our warehouse has been built with a very slight incline on the floor. So if there's any spillages which aren't captured, there's a tank underneath the floor. We've got bundled waste underneath the floor which captures any residue. We've got some tanks offside which capture anything that does spillage, so there's no escape into the waterways or anything like that. And these are part of our SEPA license for handling liquids. From a waste management point of view, depending on what the volumes are, you can get in our industry an exemption if you're handling sort of one type of material, like say for example cardboard, and it's maybe 50 tonnes a year or whatever that. Now, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but there is an exemption granted for that. When you start doing different things in bigger volumes, the likelihood of getting an exemption is less likely, because obviously there's more activity there. So I think at some point you would come under some kind of you would want to verify just what you're doing is compliant with likes of the EA or SEPA if you're going to be doing that. But the danger is if you're a big facility that you turn it into a waste facility rather than an actual warehouse. There's a balance there, I'm sure, at the end of the day. So most of the companies we use is for that very reason, I suspect. Yeah.
So it's not so much an HMRC license, which is where I'm looking at this from, which is that there would be no requirement, but from
possibly it's compliance and environmental. Certainly, you would want somebody just to understand what you're doing and let you know that's fine to continue.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives a balanced answer, that one, to the question. Any others, Graham?
Just one more from Lorena. She's asked, do you destroy duty suspended waste or just duty paid?
Yeah, both.
Both. Yeah.
Both. It's simple as that. We do both.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember here, the process that we've talked about here, definitely this applies to duty suspended product going to someone like John and Wyllie's. Absolutely applies to duty paid product going to John and Wyllie's if you're seeking to claim duty drawback, and we've heard some potential issues around that. But if you and why would you? But I've known owners of goods destroy duty paid goods and not seek a drawback claim, then there is no consent required. I mean, you just get you go to John and you get it destroyed. Period. So So John and obviously Wylie's can accommodate both statuses. Of goods. The question is, you know, do you need to follow the HMRC compliant process, or do you not need to? And I think that then hinges on, one, the status of the goods, and your intent on whether you require, you know, seek a drawback claim, NOI, notice of intention, submit that, and claim duty drawback if you can. Does that make sense?
I'd agree with that. That makes sense.
Good.
Very good. Yes.
Good.
Yes, that's excellent.
Good. Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Any other thing, Graham?
That's it. That's the last one.
Good.
If you got any more, just please send them to me. You can email them to secretary@thebwa.com. There may be more questions. I'm sure there will be. Yeah.
Good. And we're happy to share the slides. Apologies. Yes.
Yeah, we'll put an update on the website, so the recording will be available, and the slides will be there for download as well.
Great. Okay, excellent. Well, I enjoyed that, John. Thank you for your
I did. Sorry for the wee hiccup at the beginning. I hope we didn't delay it too much. But for me, I certainly thoroughly enjoyed it. There were some great questions there as well, which is good. So and if anybody wants to get in touch with us, I'm happy to just go through yourself, Graham, if you don't mind, if that's okay, with contact details and stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, okay. And just from me to say thank you for everybody attending. We had a good show, which is great. I think at one point over 56 attendees, which was a great show for us. Hopefully you found that enjoyable, informative, and useful. And if there's any subjects, and I think Graham, you'd be able to facilitate that. If there's any subject that you wish us to address going forward, and we do have a plan of these webinars going forward. If there's any issue or subject that you would like us to address and create a webinar around, and please do reach out to Graham and let us know. But thanks for your attendance. I really enjoyed that. I think it was really informative. Thanks for you, John. That was excellent input.
Thank you. Nice to be invited, and good, the whole presentation. So Graham, thanks again. That went very smoothly.
Good. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.
Much obliged. Okay.
Take care. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.